Wie haben wir das Herz, soll man ziehen lassen? Wenn wir werden geboren als solche Fälle, wo es einer dem anderen geht über, und nicht nur allemal geht man über, nur eine Sache stellt man allein aus, falsche Sachen, man stellt allein auf als solche Sachen, wo sie nicht ausgehalten auf die Chok, es nicht ausgehalten auf die Teure.
Wenn man hört, anything was man hört, du hand bei Nacht, in English do a word, think out of the box.
Mr. Serio and Judge Kamitz, what are the most important things one needs to know before being involved in a foreclosure or entering into a short sale?
I spoke to a prosecutor the other day who's in the Economic Crimes Bureau of the Kings County DA's office, and he told me that 25% of fraudulent sales are sales from straw sellers, people who do not really own the property.
Most people who buy a home don't buy the house with the idea, oh, I'll go into foreclosure. We buy a home to give a good place to live for our families. So your credit is one of the most important things that you have in the ability to buy a home. So it's very, very important that you make your mortgage payments on time when you make them. Of course, if you make your mortgage payments, we don't have to worry about foreclosure. But now month number 1 comes and you can't make that payment. Even if you have to struggle and you have that problem, if you make the mortgage payment within the 30 days of the month, it's due on the 1st of the month, as long as you make that mortgage payment within the month, your credit is not affected. The 3rd month is the crucial month. By the time you reach month number 3 where you haven't made that payment, you are now in default of the mortgage. Now listen, if you can't imagine something that you did that week that Hashem wants to give you a reward, don't talk to those people because they're not there to help you, they're there to help themselves. Go to an attorney. And I recommend to people when they find themselves really having this difficult time to take whatever money they can and put it on the side. The bank won't be accepting your payments after 3 months unless you have all of the money to give them.
And the FBI came to see him and he said, Mr. Brogan, when you were an agent with the union, did you take any bribes? What would you say? What would you say? That's the worst answer you could have given. I told you not to say anything, didn't I? And I'm not kidding. No, because Mr. Brogan took bribes. If he said yes, they couldn't do anything because it was 7 years ago beyond the statute of limitations. If he said nothing, they couldn't do anything because he didn't say anything. But by saying no, he lied, created a new crime, violation of 1001 Title 18, and was indicted, convicted, taken up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said there is no exculpatory no, which means you just can't say to cover yourself that you're innocently not involved. So say nothing. When the word is in your mouth, you're the master. When the word is out of your mouth, you're the slave.
The government has to prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Don't help them by speaking to them and filling in gaps in their case.
My client said to me, I'm accused of something very serious. The officer wants to talk to me down at the station. I says, give me his number and his name. He says, no, I don't want to upset him. I says, give me his name and number. He gave me his name and number. I called the officer. I says, I can't have you talk to my client. So the officer tried to be a tough guy with me. And he said, look, we can come and arrest him. I says, if you got to arrest him. But you're not talking to him. You're not saying a word. They didn't arrest him. They didn't have a case. If he had gone down there, he would have explained. If he would have explained, he would have put himself in the soup. If he would have put himself in the soup, he would have been cooked.
But he really has no involvement in the organization, and he's just a board member and signs checks. One early morning, this board member, along with some of the others, were arrested and indicted for grand larceny with potential jail time of 5 to 10 years. That the fact that he signed every check, they believe that all the fraud was done with his knowledge, and even more so was directed by him.
Like if you do get subpoenaed to be a witness or a non-party witness in a civil case, they want you to appear for a deposition. They have to tell you in the subpoena itself why they are subpoenaing you. If they don't do that, the subpoena is defective.
Every person has a right to apply for public benefits. In regards to assets, if there's an elderly person residing in your household, and when I say elderly, 60 or above, I'm almost there, so I don't consider myself elderly, but it's the federal government and the state rules, then you can have $3,000 in assets. If everyone in your household is under 60, then it's $2,000. You can also own a home. The myth out there is that you cannot own a home and receive ongoing public assistance. You can own a home that you reside in, that you live in on a day-to-day basis. The government do place a lien on your home, and that lien is lifted once you get off cash assistance, public assistance, or unfortunately you pass away.
A nursing home today is about $100,000 a year out of your pocket, and you would have to spend down your assets before you would be eligible for a Medicaid, which would be the part of that.
A person who swindled the Jewish community out of tens and tens of millions of dollars. One of his mahalachs is that while he was in the middle of a business deal, he would have a Rosh Hashiva come in and make an impassioned plea for money. He would take out a check for $25,000 and immediately write it on the spot. Now, of course, if you're sitting there and listening to this, a man who writes a check for $25,000, I mean, we're talking about a Goysa Askin, someone who's necessarily we should believe. Not necessarily so. It was all timed he had an appointment with the Rosh Hashiva to come in specifically in that moment while he's involved in the business negotiation. This is not an exaggeration. There are people in our community who unfortunately use and abuse B'nai Torah in a way in which they should not be used. The first thing I ask them when they've done something very foolish with a capital V, the first thing I ask them, did you discuss this matter with your wife? That's the first thing I ask him. And invariably, I have yet in 37 years to have someone who walked into my office who was swindled with a fraud, who had told me that he had discussed it with his Rebbetzin. Why? Because we ma'aminim b'mei ma'aminim, we believe.
How do you avoid all that? Very simple. Put your agreement in writing.
And you can say, I understand what you're saying to me in this email, but add in the language, but nothing's going to be final until we have a full writing, a separate writing that contains everything.
Your Honor, Judge Sweeney, can you tell us some of your experience where people came into your courtroom and said, I was always the true owner. It was just in my friend's name.
Somebody purchases a home with your money. The home is in their name. Of course, the promise is he's going to pay you back or he's going to transfer the home back to you at some point in time. And it doesn't go like that. He doesn't do what he's supposed to do under the handshake deal. So now let's say the person who owns the home flips the house and sells it to someone else. And that someone else knows nothing of that deal. That person, if certain things are proven, is a good faith purchaser and gets the home. There's nothing you can do about it.
The landlord really wants $1,500 a month, so he takes $500 on the side from the tenant. It has now turned into a criminal investigation, and it's not worth it.
The parish for insurance is to indemnify, zurückgeben jene dem Mensch, zurückstellen dem Mensch, wie es gewähnt, vor dem Claim. Tome hat man nicht gekauft, die richtige Insurance. In der Policy nicht auf der richtige genommen. There's nobody home. Wann weiß man, wie viel Inventory man gehabt? Sie do auf der Tax Return. A Platz, da steht Inventory. In der Insurance Company kickt, also gehabt $20,000 Inventory, jetzt auf verbrennt geworden der Platz. Aber der Adjuster sagt, es liegt do $1 million wert von Scheuren. $20,000, that's it. A innocent bystander walkt da durch, was ist geschehen, du? Was denkt sich, du? Ja, ich hab's ihm gewähnt. In der Guy was, he hit me, this guy. Die gemeint, was? Ich bin doch erst gekommen jetzt von Besmetisch, was heißt, ich hab doch geschlagen. So halbt sich von der Schakel Vetari hin und zurück. Your word against his word. Man habt und der Mensch mit keiteltem Mann. Man nimmt ihn mal an der Police Station, geht durch Central Booking. In der nächste Sache, was man weiß, ist, der Reuer, die ganze Organisation kommt daran. Pedien schwierig mit rauszunehmen der Mensch. Hatte personal liability, hatte gehabt a HO4, das meint a Rentes Policy, sie a Condo Policy, a Homeowners Policy, hat wer soll man rausnehmen, darf nicht die ganze Stutt wissen, darf man nicht zusammenschnurren. Die claimen gehen $1 Million. Hat reingegeben a Bill von $7,000 der erste Heudisch, in der alles et ausgenannte the company is ekets anders eingestanden, in was meint the company bekommt a Bill von $7,000. Da haben sie rückgeschickt, einfach $7,000, schickt mal rup. Keiner hat nicht gewiss von der Mensch, haben sie denied the ganze claim. So man hat compromised $1 Million für $5,000.